Okay, so today's webinar training is going to be on two things: rate schedule and SuperBill. So we'll talk about the rate schedule first. But the rate schedule is basically, fee schedule or whatever. I've heard different ways of saying that through the different practice or through visiting different practices. But basically, you're just setting up a fee associated with each CPT code or each procedure that you'll be performing at your practice. So you'll need to set up this rate schedule so that way when your billers are creating charges, they don't manually have to type in the amount each time. You don't want that to happen. You'll have some upset billers probably. So that's what the rate schedule is. We'll look at that. It's actually fairly simple. We like to keep it, we like to keep it pretty simple, and I'll tell you why. But the other thing we're going to talk about afterwards is SuperBill template. So that's also referred to as the fee sheet. If you guys do have or do use a SuperBill currently, then that's something that you'd want to continue using in Management Plus. If you plan on using Management Plus's EHR module and have purchased that, then more likely you will not be using the SuperBill that I'm going to talk about today. You'll have an electronic SuperBill that's going to be available through the EHR forms. So you won't need to worry about that. But so we're going to dive right in here. So I've got my train database open here. First thing we're going to talk about, like I said, is our rate schedule. So to access that, we're going to go to File, Billing, Billing Setup, and then Rate Schedule. Okay, and this is as big as the window gets, unfortunately. Oh no, I take that back as soon as I started moving it. So you can't maximize it, but it looks like you can resize it. Okay. So we do have some, well, right here, you've got your billing entity. If you have multiple billing entities, you can, based on what entity you have selected up here, it's going to add the fee schedule for that billing entity. Same thing for coverage. If you do have a coverage selected here, whatever you start adding as far as fees, it will add it for that coverage or for that coverage specifically. And we'll look at that in a minute. But below that, we've got these rate view filters. So this is basically just filtering out or filtering your view. So if you only wanted to see a rate schedule or fees that are applicable to Dr. Thornton or Dr. Smith or Dr. Jones or anyone, you would select that physician, and only those applicable rate schedule entries would show up in there. So these ones are for all physicians, so they're going to stay in there no matter who we have selected. But same thing for location and then specific CPT code. So if I only wanted to look at the ones that are tied to 92004, obviously we only have 2 in our list here, but the other one disappeared because I only searched for this 92004. So again, these are just search fields to narrow down your search results down here on the bottom. But these top ones do apply to your rate schedule when you add them, and I'll show you what that means. But to add a rate schedule, we just right-click and we click on Add. So again, just right-clicking in this blank area. Even if you right-clicked on, if you didn't have any blank area, if you right-clicked on one of the entries, you still have the Add option. But if we select that, by default, we see the billing entity. It's just going to be looking at what entity we have selected. Coverage, we don't have a coverage selected up here, so it's just going to say default rate schedule. And then all of these other pieces of information in here are conditions. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's add a CPT code. So what do we got here? 92004, 92015. So if we were to do, let's just do a different one here, 92002. So we've got our CPT code, and then we just want to put in our fee. So let's just put in a fee. That's expensive, but and that's really it. You know, especially when you're first building your rate schedule, you want to keep it simple. And all you want to do is add in all of your CPT codes and add a fee. So you're going to put in your CPT code in this field, and you're going to put in your fee in this field. And that's it. Just click OK. And then you've got your first entry there. You've got that selected. Okay. Now let me tell you, let's right-click, let's add another one. We'll talk about what some of these other boxes are in here for. So let's just do 99204. Let's say that is okay. All right, so we see that there's a physician, there's a location, we've got some modifier options in here, place of service, type of service, when this is effective, and when this expires. So I want to talk about those fields. Obviously, to the right of each drop-down, we've got a magnifying glass, and like with anything in Management Plus, whenever you see the magnifying glass, it means that this field is accessing a table behind the scenes. And if you want to look at that table, you click on the magnifying glass, and it'll pull up that table. And then from here, you've got your options to add, edit, delete, copy, merge, some of these options depending on the table. So for the physician, we're looking at the physician table. When we click on there, modifiers, we're looking at the modifier table, and so forth. But as you saw when we first just added our first CPT code and fee, I left all of this blank. And the reason I do that is because these are conditions for when this fee is applicable. So again, remember with your rate schedule, less is more. So the least amount of information you can put in here, the better, for the most part, at least when you're building your first rate schedule. Because what happens is if I were to select a modifier in here, or if I were to select a specific physician, if you have multiple physicians, or a specific place of service, one thing that is confusing, or a lot of people assume, I guess, is that if you fill this out, that when you start adding the charge, when you put in 99204, the system will automatically populate these fields based on what you've selected here, and that's not true. So again, that's not true. It does not populate automatically. That's going to be something called billing rules, where you can set conditions and have the system automatically populate fields for you, and those are billing rules. In this window here for the rate schedule, you're setting the conditions of when this fee applies with the CPT code. So in this case here, if I were to save this fee, this 99204 won't populate a $355 charge until I have the physician selected as Dr. Jones on my charge screen, and the place of service is 11, and the type of service is 1. Once I have these 3 fields filled out, or I'm sorry, these 4 fields filled out on my charge screen, then my fee will show up, and I'll see the $355. So we don't want to do that. We want to have the fee show up as quickly as possible by only having to type in the CPT code, and then we can see our fee. So that's why we don't fill out any of these other pieces of information unless you absolutely want to. So if you do have a different fee for a CPT code based on a physician, once you've created your default one, you can definitely come in here and add one for a different condition. So let me show you what that means. So I've got my 92004, and that's going to be applicable for all coverages, all physicians. But if I were to come in here and I want to just change that up a little bit, So for Dr. Thornton, for some reason, he doesn't have he doesn't charge the normal $188. His is a little bit less. He charges $160. So I could set that. So now I've got, you see, I've got two CPT codes, 92004. Automatically, when I type in that CPT code, when I enter my charge, it'll pull in the 188. But as soon as I select Dr. Thornton as the doctor, it'll change that fee to 160. So that's how you can set up your rate schedule specific, and like I said, you can get very specific with when that fee is applicable. But again, when you're first creating your rate schedule, just right-click Add, put in your CPT code, and then put in your fee, click OK. Okay, so the other things in here, these two fields here, well, actually, I guess I didn't talk about this. So we've got our effective date, pretty self-explanatory, but you know, if you have a fee schedule, you guys are changing prices come next year, you could technically enter in your fee schedule ahead of time and put in the effective date of when that starts, and then go to all of your old ones and put in an expiration date. So then that way they automatically don't apply after that date, the expiration date, and then your new ones will start on your effective date. So you can set that up. We talked about our fee. Copayment, you can set up a required copayment. So it's probably better to enter the copayment on the coverage plan setup for each individual patient. When you set up their insurance, there's a field to add copayment specific to that patient. And we'll talk about that in our patient demographics training. But you do have the option of, whenever you use this CPT code, whenever you go to post this charge, if you have something entered in here like a $20 copayment, what the system will do is it will, once you post that 92004 charge, it'll automatically pop up a window saying there's a $20 copayment required. You want to collect that now. And then you can click yes or no. If you click yes, it'll take you to the patient payment screen, and you can collect that $20 payment. So, you know, I haven't seen a whole lot of practices find this super useful, but that is there if you find a use for it, and that the same copay would be applicable for that CPT code no matter when you used it. The other option here is obligated to accept amount. So again, this is going to be more applicable for insurance payments. So when you receive that information back, you can automatically have an amount populated for that obligated to accept amount when you're posting your payments, your group payments or insurance payments. So based on the CPT code used, that would automatically pull through. So you can put that in. If you don't put it here, that's fine. I mean, if that's changing, it's very easy to just type that in manually when you're doing your group payments. You would just put in your obligated to accept amount, as well as, you know, copay or a pledged deductible, or you know, any other fees like that. You would just put that in at the time you're posting the remit or the payment. So that's what those two boxes do. Okay, so we've got a few listed here. My right-click menu, we talked about add. Obviously, you know, editing will be the same as just double-clicking on it. You can delete one, and then what this is create new. So if we click on that, basically what it does is just duplicates your rate schedule. So if you wanted to duplicate it for Medicare, you could come in here and select them. And oh, I'm sorry, I've got that backwards. So it's looking at your copy from rate schedule. So you're going to leave everything blank here because that's what you're looking at. It's just your default rate schedule, and then it's going to create a new rate schedule for these conditions. So if you wanted to create a new rate schedule for Medicare, and maybe just alter that a little bit, you could do that. And then you could add a specific physician or location in that. And then you see here duplicates, keep existing rates, information to copy, copy both the CPT codes and the rates. So we do want to leave those checked there. And then we click OK. Now what you see is it's applied, it's taken those same CPT codes here, it's applied the same rates, and then now what you see over here is it says Medicare. So these are specific to Medicare for all physicians, and it copied these default ones. So I told it not to look at specific doctors, so it did not copy this one for Dr. Thornton. It only looked at the ones that are applicable for all physicians. And I copied those, and now we've got the Medicare here. So now what I can do is I can just jump in here and I can edit these if I want, so I don't have to start from scratch, is basically the main thing. So if you did have a duplicate fee schedule for coverage, you can just do it that way. Again, that was just right-click, create new, and then you're choosing what rate schedule to look at or the copy from, and then what the new rate schedule is going to be applied to, whether it's a coverage, a physician, location, and how to do that. So, okay, the other way to do that, if you were to add it manually, is if you did have if you wanted to come up here and, let's see here. Close out here. So one thing to keep in mind, whenever you are done, don't just click on the X here. We actually do want to save this. And I'd say the majority of the windows in Management Plus, you're okay just to close it. It'll save. But the rate schedule, you do want to click on Save and then go ahead and close it, instead of just clicking out on that X. But I want to come back in here. And then what I want to show you is if we were to select a coverage up here, so let's just say for Blue Cross Blue Shield. Once I tab out of the coverage selection, you'll know that my rate schedule disappears because there's no fees that are tied specific to Blue Cross Blue Shield. So if I were to right-click and add, this is how I could do it manually. So instead of that right-click create new option I just showed you and duplicating all of those existing rate schedules specific to a new coverage, you could just add it manually like this, where you would select the specific coverage at the top right here, and then you would come in and just manually add those fees. So if you didn't want to copy all of the fees, you only wanted to add just a few, you could do that manually just by adding a few this way. So, if they were to do, oops, didn't want to do that. Okay, so if we look at this now, we see that this is tied to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois for this coverage, or this fee schedule. Okay. And that's basically what we would do. These ones here, same thing, you could just select a group and you could set the effective date or expiration date. That was through a right-click menu. Set rates with formula, I'd say just skip this. There is a way to add with a specific formula, but it's a little bit easier just to go ahead and manually add those in instead of selecting that formula. So I'm not going to go into too much detail with that one. But that's it with our rate schedule. So again, just remember less is more. Get all your default charges in there, and if you needed to go out or need to get a little bit more specific, you can. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is our SuperBill templates and how to add a SuperBill to Management Plus and how to edit it. How to edit it. To access the SuperBills, we're going to go to File, Billing, Billing Setup, and you'll notice we've got two options. We've got SuperBill templates, SuperBill Word templates. Technically, you can create a template for your SuperBill in Word and import that into Management Plus. What we found, though, is there are compatibility issues with performing certain functions and printing those into Management Plus. So especially where you're first starting out, it's best just to work with the SuperBill templates option. So just keep in mind that these are different. SuperBill Word template is a different format of SuperBills than this SuperBill templates here. SuperBill templates uses a designer that is specific to Management Plus to build the SuperBills. Okay. So that's what we're going to look at. So SuperBill templates. Okay, now your screen is going to be blank. We've already got a couple in here. But we've actually already created a ICD-10 SuperBill. And it's free. There's no cost for it, but we can send that to you. You do have to request it. We don't automatically load it into Management Plus because not all clients use SuperBills. So you would have to request that from the trainer that you're working with, or anyone from our support team can email that to you. So let me run through that process. So let's say that you just received your ICD-10 SuperBill. You know, you're going to want to look at that and modify it. Let's see here. So I've actually got one saved to my desktop. So that's what you'll want to do. When you receive that in an email from Management Plus, go ahead and save that attachment to your desktop. You'll notice here at the bottom it says ICD-10.sbt. SBT is the type of file, and it is specific to Management Plus. So if I try to double-click and open that up, you know, Windows doesn't know how to read it. You can't open it up with Word or anything like that. It does have to be opened up in Management Plus only. Okay, so I've got it on my desktop. I need to import that into Management Plus. So if I go back to my SuperBill templates, I'm going to go to File, Billing Setup, SuperBill templates. Now on the right, we've got our table buttons, which are pretty standard. One option that we have down here is import and export. Now, if you don't have any any SuperBill templates already in here, these are going to be grayed out. You're not going to be able to import or export anything in here. So, so what we'll need to do is we'll need to add a SuperBill in here, just so you can import the ICD-10 one. And that's really simple. All we do is we just click on Add in this table. It'll pull up this designer, which we'll look at in detail here in a minute. But I'm just going to click on Save. And it's behind this window here. Okay, so when I click on Save, it's going to ask me what to name this. I'm just going to name it Test for right now. And then it's created one SuperBill template. Now, once I've had that, you'll notice that your import and export buttons are now active, or they're in black text. And then once they're active, you can go ahead and click on Import. You could search your computer for that file that you saved. Click on Open, and that'll pull it in for you, and you'll have it there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And once you're done, once you have it pulled in, you can delete that test one or whatever you name it. You can go ahead and delete that out just by clicking on the delete button. And I'm just going to leave one in here. Okay, so now that we have our ICD-10 SuperBill, I'm going to double-click and open that up, and I'm going to maximize this window. Okay, now you'll see on the left, this SuperBill template, this designer, it's very customizable. Because it's so customizable, it's really easy to make a mistake, to change something around that you didn't really mean to. Because everything you see here, all of these little boxes, these were manually entered, by hand, basically, into this template. So unfortunately, it's not very user-friendly to change these around, but it definitely is possible. If you have something that is a SuperBill that you guys use, that your practice uses, and you don't want to use this, there is an option where we can design it for you and come in here and actually create that SuperBill that you use or create something similar. Unfortunately, there's a charge for that, but you're welcome to talk to one of the trainers, and we can see what we can get done for you. But this is free. Like I said, this ICD-10 SuperBill, this is the only free one that we do give to you to use for SuperBills. But what we're going to do is we're just going to show you how to change a few different things here. So up at the top, it'll probably say default. Actually, I might have grabbed the wrong one. Let me close this out real quick. Let's delete this out. Oh, should have added it first. Now I have to add a test one. Okay, that's fine. All right, so at the top, it'll have address on there. I think it's just generic, and then it'll have practice name, I think is what it says. In this example here, we've actually already put in our address and name and phone number. But this is information that you'll put specific to your practice. And if you click on it, you'll notice you can't really start typing in there. If you double click, it pulls up this label properties and so forth. So when you click on a field, you'll notice right here we've got this little tool. It's called a component inspector. And some of that information changes depending on what we click on. But if we click on this address and we come over to our component inspector, you'll notice that there's a section here that says caption. So if we click in there, this is where we would edit that field. Okay, so this is not the address, this is the address. Okay, so I'm just going to click tab, and then that'll save that information up here. So there's some fields in here that are considered labels, basically just holding text. And then there's other fields in here that are tied to actions and different fields within Management Plus. So for instance, if we come down below, we've got the patient information. So you can print this SuperBill specific to a patient, or you can print a batch of SuperBills based on all the patients you have scheduled for that day or you know, that week even. You could print those all at the same time. But so this section here is going to list the patient information and then some of their appointment information. So you'll notice here, let's just look at the phone number. So this says phone, and this is going to be just a label. It's just holding text. But to the right, this says home phone, and you'll notice that the type here says patient field component, which means that it's tied to the home phone on the patient demographic within Management Plus. So when you merge this with a patient and print this from a patient's account, it'll automatically pull in the patient's home phone number here. It'll pull in the patient's date of birth, their gender, their address. It'll pull all that in for you, again, depending on what patient you have open that you've printed this from. So you don't want to change any of this information. Again, these are just actions. We don't want to change any of this information. We'll just leave that be. But what you can come down and do is you can change some of these if you don't use some of these diagnosis codes. You can come in, and again, if you just click on the field, you'll come up here, and then you'll go to the caption area, and then just type in the diagnosis code that you want, and then come over here to the actual code itself and type in whatever new diagnosis code you'd rather have listed there. Now, if for some reason you do something in here that you didn't mean to do and you don't know how to get it back, there's no undo button. So what we always say is once you've done something you like, save it. So if I've just changed I put all my practice information here at the top. I need to come up to File and click on Save, and just do that periodically. Trust me, it's going to be better for you, especially when you're just first becoming familiar with this designer. So come up, File, Save. I like what I did. Okay, I've saved that. I'm just going to open it up again. I'm going to work on my next thing. So what you'll notice is, let's say you wanted to get rid of some of these. So you can actually, there's two tabs here. This is our first page, and there's actually a page 2. Now, if you don't use any of these, the retina, glaucoma, diabetes, you don't use any of that information, there is an option up here next to File. We got File, Edit, then Pages. You can just delete current page. So I can just delete this entire page, so that way it's my SuperBill only prints out on one page. Again, that's if you don't use any of those codes, or you don't want those. You don't really want those on there. So again, that's just delete current page. But if we go back to our front page here, you can delete some of these out. Now, this is what happens though. The best thing to do is just come up to the caption and actually just delete that out there, and then press Tab. And so you'll see there now it's blank. If I went here and I tried to just delete this out, it's not gonna work. And it's not like Excel. Unfortunately, if I clear this out, it's not going to delete out a row and move up all the information. It won't do that like you're probably familiar with in Excel, because each one of these squares or rectangles that you see, these were all manually added. So let me show you. If I left click on one of these and I drag it, you'll see that I'm dragging this entire rectangle. And now behind it, it shows this here. So when we created this, we actually created all these different shapes and all of these different rows, and they were all manually put there. So that's why it's a little easy to accidentally click something and rearrange it and just really screw it up. So just be careful when you're in here. And then again, save it, or if you like something and you really want to change it, you could actually save it, and then I'm not going to save this one for obvious reasons. But what you can do is you could copy that. Oh, I'm sorry, not copy it, but you could edit and then just save as to create a copy. So if we go to File, Save As, and I'm just going to name this my ICD-10 testing. Okay, now I know I've got a good one here, but now I'm going to go ahead and play around in this one. So that takes a little bit of pressure off me to have to save this, because I can always revert back to my good one. But those are just kind of some tricks to remember as you're working in this SuperBill template. Again, just the main thing to remember is you're just going to click on one of these fields, and you're going to make sure that it says label component. It has the word label in there, and then you can come down to caption and change that. One other thing I want to show you on here is in this component inspector, you can click on the font, and there's a little plus sign next to it. If you click on it, it'll expand it, and you can change the type of font, and you can change the style to make it bold or italic. So you do have the options for those label fields to change that if you wanted to. And you see that we've done that with Management Plus. We've changed it to bold. Okay. There is a ICD-10, or rather there is a SuperBill template designer training that we have in our training videos that Jennifer has done. It's more comprehensive, goes into details on how to, not only what I've just talked about, but some additional things that you can do. I think it's about an hour or so, so you're welcome to watch that on through our training videos. It's not going to be numbered, so it's not one of our online webinar trainings, but it's just a training she's done in the past for our existing clients. So if you'd like to watch that, you're welcome to. If you have any issues or any problems, obviously reach out to your trainer or our support team, and we can definitely help you with any problems. But that's going to be it. So I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar. If you do you have any questions and you're here live with me, feel free to type those into the question bar on your webinar, and I'll answer those in just a second.